Alright, I am back with another build, and today we are doing a build request on our Theory Crafting livestream that we did, I guess it would be a couple of weeks ago now. I was asked to do a build based on using Eldritch Blast with War Magic. For those of you that don't know what War Magic is, it is a level 7 Eldritch Knight feature, which whenever you cast a cantrip allows you to make a weapon attack as a bonus action. In theory, allowing you to use your action to cast a spell, and then, you know, weapon attack, be able to get a weapon attack anyway, which in theory sounds great. But I had a problem with it. By using our action to attack with a cantrip, we are losing extra attack, meaning that while we are technically still making 2 attacks per turn, one with a cantrip and one with a weapon, it didn't quite feel right. I would love to be able to cast a spell with our action and then be able to get 2 attacks, so 2 weapon attacks to get that full Spellsword feel. And then I remembered a build request I got a long time ago. Somebody asked me to make a left-handed Spellsword using our main weapon in the offhand, allowing us to cast a spell with an action and then attack with our bonus action. So then it got me thinking, if we used Thief Rogue to get 2 bonus actions, we get that spell mixed with 2 extra attacks. So I got cooking. What I have for you today, and the reason this video is presented slightly differently, is because I have 4 different builds, each showcasing variations on this concept. Each build is going to use the same starting stats, and I'll get into that now. You're going to start off with a 17 in strength, putting your +2 there. What that's going to allow you to do is that if you use Ethel's Boon to bump your strength up, as you can see here, and then the Potion of Everlasting Vigour to put it to 20, you will have a capped out stat to use your offhand weapons with, as you can see here. So that means that no matter what class you mix this with, you will have pretty much the highest attack stat with your offhand weapon that you can get. Every single one of these builds is going to go as follows. You're going to take your first level in Fighter, which means you're going to get Constitution saving throw proficiency, the 2 weapon fighting style, and heavy armor proficiency, because this is a heavy armor build since we had to put dexterity down. Then, right after your first level of Fighter, you are going to take a 1 level dip in your full spellcaster of choice. The primary build I'm going to be showcasing here is Wizard, because it's intelligence based and has the most variety in the amount of spells you can choose. You can learn spells from scrolls, and it's the closest in Eldritch Knight, kind of keeping with the original request as best I could. However, I will be showing Wisdom and Charisma variants as well. But you can use any full caster, so that is Wizard, Sorcerer, Bard, Druid, or Cleric, and they will all work. You want to take a 1 level dip in your full caster of choice, and then immediately go to level 4 of Rogue. Taking that 1 level dip in your spellcaster choice is going to get you basic level 1 spells and some cantrips to trigger equipment and fuel this playstyle, while going straight to level 4 of Rogue is going to get you that extra bonus action and your first feat. Now, all of these builds are going to take 2 ability score improvements with their feats. Basically, you use your Ethel's Boon and Potion of Everlasting Vigour to get your strength to 20, and then you use your 2 ability score improvements that you get from Rogue and your Spellcaster class to bump up your primary spellcasting modifier to 20. In the case of this build, that is Intelligence. So in total, you will have 20 Strength, 10 Dex, 20 Constitution, and 20 of your spell casting stat, putting your Dexterity at 10 so it's not in the negatives, so you're not abysmal at initiative rolls, and then dumping the other 2. Now, dumping the other stats like this is a bit unfortunate, but that's just how this build has to roll, unfortunately. However, you will feel the power that you are granted with this build, being able to get high damage on your melee attacks and high damage on your spells. You are going to basically be a mix of a blaster caster and a martial fighter, which is absolutely awesome. Now, once you've hit that 4th level of Rogue with those 2 levels in Fighter and Wizard respectively, you will be at total level 6, and this build will be fully online. You would have gotten that first feat, and by level 5 you would have had extra attack from your bonus actions anyway, so nothing is delayed. And then once you have those first 6 levels, you're going to put another level into Fighter to get Action Surge, and then throw the rest of your levels into your spellcasting class to get you to level 6, which is going to get you the big bulk of your spells. So, all of these builds are going to be as follows. You're going to have your final levels be 2 Fighter, 4 Rogue, and 6 of your spellcasting class. So, let's get into the equipment. Now, the reason that the equipment is really, really important to this build is it's going to fuel a lot of what this makes this playstyle really strong. Let's get into the main crux of it. These 3 accessories here. With this, we are building an elemental caster variant because this is a wizard build. So this is going to give us access to things like elemental cantrips like Firebolt, Ray of Frost, Shocking Grasp if I remember to take it. I accidentally took Mage Hand instead. Acid Splash, but we also gain other cool spells like Magic Missile, Chromatic Orb, Longstrider, Lightning Bolt, Fireball, all that good stuff. As a rogue, we're going to be getting our bonus action dashes and disengages, allowing for high maneuverability, and because we are using finesse weapons with this build, because they ended up being light, we can also use sneak attack to further augment our melee power, which is super good. So, let's have a look at the accessories first, as they are quite important. First up, the Necklace of Elemental Augmentation, allowing us to add our spellcasting modifier to the damage dealt by elemental cantrips, that being Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Thunder. Unfortunately, things like Radiant, Necrotic, and Poison, and Force, which would be Eldritch Blast, are excluded, so those spells won't really work here, which is why I've gone for more of an elemental caster. This synchronizes well with the Ring of Elemental Infusion. Whenever we deal those same damage types using a spell or cantrip, that element will infuse our weapon, allowing our next attack with our weapon to do an additional 1d4 damage of that element on our first successful weapon attack. So this fuels into our playstyle really nicely. We can cast a cantrip, that may be Firebolt for example, and gain more damage on it and a buff to our next weapon attack, which also works with the Ring of Arcane Synergy, allowing us to, when we deal damage with a cantrip, gain Arcane Synergy, which adds our spellcasting ability modifier to the damage of our weapon attack. So we're also going to be getting that on top of it. Stacking all of these buffs together is going to create a really powerful gameplay loop that is going to work well in the long run. Now, I'm going to quickly show off the weapons first as well, because it's quite important. Now, your main hand weapon can be any weapon with the light property. It does not matter. A dagger, a short sword, a scimitar, I believe they're also light. Those will all work here. I have just gone with the Susa dagger because it's a decent option to get in Act 1, because it gives you a little bit more utility if you want to use a main hand attack, as this will allow you to silence a target on hit, so it can help you deal with spellcasters. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. This could be a base level dagger. It does not matter because we are not going to be using our main hand to weapon attack. Our offhand is what's important, and a really solid early game option that I would personally recommend is the Knife of the Undermountain King. Reduce the number you need to roll a critical hit while attacking by 1, this effect can stack. Already, that's amazing. When you roll a 2 damage or less, re-roll the dice, taking the highest result. This is amazing. This is perfect for an offhand weapon, allowing us to just get those high damage critical attacks and always be able to re-roll those damage die to get the most out of our attacks, which is awesome. You also have advantage on attack rolls against slightly or heavily obscured creatures, but that's whatever, and it has a +2 enchantment. The fact that this is obtained in Act 1 or 1.5 if you prefer, it's from the Githyanki Crash, means that this is obtainable extremely early on, allowing this playstyle to really kick into high gear early, because again, the build is kind of finished by level 5, the basic concept is, and then you just keep getting stronger beyond that, and you can get this weapon around that time, so it all fits together quite nicely. But of course, again, any light weapon in the offhand will work, so pick and choose your favourite. This is just my personal recommendation. And I've also gone with the Darkfire Shortbow in the offhand, just to give us a ranged weapon option if we need it for some reason, although it shouldn't really come up. But this is going to give us resistance to fire and cold damage. The fire damage is going to be especially important, as you'll see in a minute, and it also gives us the ability to cast haste once per long rest, which would mean we could actually cast 2 spells with our with our action instead of just one, making us even more powerful, and it also frees up a choice of a spell for later, since we wouldn't need to take haste as our choice as with our spellcasting levels. So, you know, basically giving us more utility and more options. So, definitely recommended for this build because it's going to give you a lot more to work with. Now, here's the main meat and potatoes. This is one of the biggest pieces of equipment for this build. This is the Pyro Quickness Hat. Whenever you deal fire damage with a leveled spell, so Scorching Ray or Fireball in this case, you burn yourself and gain an additional bonus action this round, meaning that for the simple cost of casting Scorching Ray or Fireball, which you probably want to be doing anyway, you gain an additional bonus action. That's 3 bonus actions, that's 3 weapon attacks after casting a spell, not taking into account haste where you may cast a spell twice, or action surge where you may cast a spell a lot of times. Like, this is insane. This makes this playstyle completely busted. You will be doing tons of damage per turn. It's gonna feel great. As for our cloak here, I've gone with the... Oh, sorry, before I get ahead of myself. This is an Act 3 option, the Pyro Quickness Hat, so I've come up with an early game option, that being the Hat of Arcane Acuity, or the Helmet, my apologies. Whenever you deal damage with a weapon attack, you gain Arcane Acuity, which basically means that the affected entity has a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls and spell difficulty class for each turn remaining. So what you can do is go for an offhand weapon attack, then cast a spell with Arcane Acuity, getting that slight buff, then make another offhand weapon attack. This is obtained really early into the game, and will work nicely. And if you want another alternate option to the Pyro Quickness Hat, we have the Helmet of Grit. When the wearer has 50% hit points or less, they have an additional bonus action. This gives you a more permanent bonus action that isn't required on casting a fire spell first, but this does put you into the danger zone, which can be, well, dangerous. So you might want to pick and choose on this one. This could be more valuable if you're able to kind of keep your HP in that, you know, green, in that kind of golden range to get this off. But I would personally stick with the Pyro Quickness Hat and just stick to spells like Scorching Ray, Fireball, and even Burning Hands as a level 1 option, which I forgot to take here, but you get the drill. And the reason that the fire damage resistance then is so good, because when we burn ourselves, we take 1d4 fire damage, meaning that we're always cutting that damage in half, meaning we're taking anywhere from 0 to 1 to 2 instead of 1 to 4, which is really good. I was taking 0 damage quite a lot. So basically not taking any damage from this quite a lot thanks to the resistance. Oh, actually, sorry, my mistake. You will take anywhere from 1 to 2 damage. The reason that we won't be taking damage from the Pyro Quickness Hat's burn is because of the Adamantine Split armor, which reduces all incoming damage by 2. So that makes the amount of damage you take from your burn from the Pyro Quickness Hat absolutely 0. All the time, meaning that there's no risk to your concentration, and you just don't take damage from it, so it's literally a free extra bonus action just for casting a fire spell, which you're probably going to be doing anyway. The Adamantine armor is obtainable in Act 1 as well, so a lot of this stuff is obtained in Act 1, making this super good. You also get the ability to, whenever a melee attack hits you, the attacker is sent reeling for 3 turns, and you can't have critical hits land against you, which is great. This is pretty much a perfect armor for this build. So, sorry my thoughts are a bit all over the place, but let's get back to the cloak. The cloak here is really important. This is the Cloak of the Weave. You gain a +1 bonus to spell save DC and spell attack rolls, which is awesome. That means our spells are gonna hit more, but we also gain Absorb Elements. Absorb elemental damage once per short rest. Take half damage from the next elemental attack targeting you, and deal an additional 1d6 of that element type on your next attack. It's just a fun little once per short rest thing that stacks nicely with our elemental kind of setup here, just to get more elemental damage, making you really feel like you're imbuing your weapons with the elements that you're casting, and just feeling like a really cool Spellsword type character. But this is an Act 3 option as well, so in the meantime you can pick up a slightly lesser version, the Cloak of Elemental Absorption in Act 2, which just has the Absorb Elements feature without the buff to our spell save DC, so, you know, it basically does the same thing, it's just slightly weaker, and you can get it in Act 2, so you might as well pick it up. Oh, and if you wanted an Act 3 option for the armor, if you don't care about using the Adamantine Splint, if you don't care about reducing the burn damage to 0, you could just go with the Armor of Persistence to... Oh no, never mind, this also gives you the... Sorry, my thoughts are all over the place. The Armor of Persistence would be a straight upgrade over the Adamantine Split Armor, because it would give you the same buff of reducing all incoming damage by 2, meaning that you don't take damage from the burn. You would also gain resistance and Blade Ward, giving you even more resistances, and a big buff to your armor class being 20. So I could absolutely see that being a preference over the Adamantine Splint. The only downside would be that people can land crits against you now, but honestly, I think the higher AC is going to be worth it in the long run. Next up, the gloves. Now these are really important. These are the Daredevil gloves. The wearer gains a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls. Very nice. But it also has a very unique ability. Your ranged spell attacks are treated as melee spell attacks when you're adjacent to a hostile creature. Basically meaning that if we are casting a ranged spell attack, we are not going to be taking disadvantage on our attacks to hit if they are within melee range. For someone who wants to be both casting spells and be attacking with melee weapons, this is a godsend. And since we're relying on heavy armor anyway and don't need a high amount of dex, so we don't need to use the gloves of dexterity, but that is an option if you want to risk it. This can really keep our playstyle flowing cleanly and nicely, not having to worry too much about our positioning in battle and having to attack and then disengage and move away to make sure we're not taking disadvantage and playing cat and mouse with our enemies and it being really annoying. This just lets us fire spells and not think about it too much. And as for our boots, these are just kind of a throwaway slot, put whatever you want in here, but I've gone for the boots of elemental momentum. Whenever we deal an elemental damage, that is acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder, with a spell or cantrip, we gain momentum, which just means we're going to get a little bit more movement speed each turn, because for those of you that don't know, momentum increases your movement speed by 1.5 meters per the remaining duration of this effect, so you just get a bit more movement speed. But anything will work for Disintegrating Nightwalkers, whatever you like. It doesn't really matter, that's just a fitless slot that you can put whatever you like in there. So yeah, overall what you're going to be getting here is a ton of elemental damage each turn, the variety to cast different spells, and for your wizard subclass you can take whatever you like, but I've personally gone with Evocation, specifically so that we can cast spells like Fireball and such in close range or near our teammates and not take damage from it, so I would recommend Evocation for this build. And again, it really works out nicely. You're just going to be getting a ton of attacks off. You can go for a Nova round with Action Surge, you're just going to be hitting left, right, and center, and it's going to feel badass as hell. This is the build that I will be showcasing in the combat footage at the end, so you're going to see the kind of main build in action. But let's get into the other variants, just so you know what we're dealing with here. As for Shadowheart here, she's showcasing the Cleric version. Now, I've specifically built a Light Cleric here, which means that there's going to be no real changes in the equipment. Obviously, we're still going to be getting fire spells here, like Burning Hands, Scorching Ray, and Fireball, so we can keep the Pyro Quickness hat on, so that, you know, we still get that third bonus action and can just keep attacking. If you don't see any new items that aren't the default here, that means they haven't been replaced. So you would use the exact same equipment, the exact same leveling scheme, going for Ethel's Boon on Strength and using the Potion of Vigour to get that to 20, and then having your Wisdom at 20 instead of your Intelligence. This basically just means that you're going to be able to do things like use Guidance, Thaumaturgy, Produce Flame instead of Firebolt, Burning Hand, Scorching Ray, and Firebolt to get that fire damage. You could trade out the Haste concentration for Spirit Guardians to get that much damage since you're going to be in melee range, which could be super, super fun. You get a bit of healing, you can get Spiritual Weapon, you can get Turn the Undead. You're still going to get your sneak attacks, you're still going to get your action surge, but you can also get cool things like Glyph of Warding as well, that can do fire damage or whatever damage you like. And again, Blue Flame is cool because it's a... well, it's a blue flame. It's called Produce Flame, but I just call it Blue Flame because that's what I know it for. And Shadowheart, if you play with her, does come with Firebolt baked in, but use Produce Flame. It's cooler. And yeah, so basically you would get all the Cleric goodies, like even Sanctuary as well, while still being able to play this playstyle. So a light Cleric Wisdom build would also work quite nicely. I would also recommend, if you wanted to go for the Druid route using the exact same setup, you could go for a Circle of the Land Druid, focusing on the fire spells, and get things like Fireball and such that way too, because you can kind of pick the circles where you could get like Fireball. Might be a bit less effective. I think if you're going to go the wisdom route here, go with Light Cleric. You're going to get the most out of it. Now, Gale is going to be showing off our Charisma variant, and which I've decided to show something other than the Pyromancy variant, just to kind of, you know, shake it up a little bit and show that this isn't reliant on fire damage. So I've actually built Gale as the same setup here, but I've gone for a Storm Sorcerer instead, giving us resistance to thunder and lightning, a bunch of extra spells like Create or Destroy Water, Call Lightning, and Sleet Storm. We kept Haste as well, and we've also gone for Scorching Ray in case you do want to use the same hat trick, but, you know, Chromatic Orb is also there. We still have all of the same stuff, so you're mostly going to be using the same equipment here, except I can show off a couple of changes. The hat I've kind of gone for here is the Hat of the Sharp Caster. When you roll a 1 or 2 on a damage die for a spell attack, that die is rerolled once, basically just allowing you to kind of really make sure that you're going to be getting those high-level spell hits, which is great. And also the boots I've gone for are the Disintegrating Nightwalkers, because if you go for Storm Sorcery, you kind of have a focus on ice, lightning, and thunder. So with this, if you decide to create ice surfaces by making things wet and then freezing them over, you won't be slipping on them, and you also get an extra usage of Misty Step, which is nice. If you don't care about the Hat of the Sharp Caster, you can go for Birthright, which is going to give you an even higher charisma stat, making your spells even more powerful. Or if you want to focus more on the cold aspect of things, you could go with the Coldburn Hat, meaning that whenever you inflict a condition, say wet, you can immediately inflict Encrusted with Frost as well, in order to be able to start freezing your enemies and deal extra cold damage. So this build isn't reliant on fire damage to get the most out of it. You can still go for like the you know, create or destroy water into you know, lightning bolt plays, which is going to deal double damage, because obviously whenever you do that, you know, whenever a wet enemy is attacked with lightning or cold damage, they take double damage, so you're going to be dealing a ton of fucking damage. Take a drink of water every time I say damage in this video, and you'll be very hydrated. So yeah, overall you can go for a setup like this, and it's still going to work quite nicely. It's not reliant on fire damage. You can do, you know, radiant damage builds, you could do fire builds, you can do full elemental builds where you use every element, you could do lightning and ice builds like this. There's a lot of room to play here. But of course, the original build concept was that I use Eldritch Blast. So let's do that. This is a slightly more melee-focused variant on the build. Most of the equipment is the same, but because we're not using fire damage, I've decided to shift the focus of the build a little bit. We're still going to be using the Knife of the Undermountain King, but now it is in the main hand. We're still going to get the critical hit stacking and the damage reroll thing, so that's fine, but we're mainly going to be attacking with Duke Ravengard's Longsword, which is going to do a little bit more damage overall with the higher damage die, that being a d8. It's a +1 weapon, but you could buff that up with the Drakethroat Glaive, for example, or the Flail of Aegis, since this is using the dual-wielding feat, because let's have a look at the levels. We have a level 6 of Fighter here, so instead of going for more levels in a spellcasting class, we decided to put those rest of those levels into Fighter, which is going to give us a bit more martial prowess, as well as, you know, an extra feat to work with. We still keep the level 4 levels of Rogue because we need to, and instead we take a 2-level dip into Warlock, because 2 levels into Warlock is all we need to make Eldritch Blast as strong as we want it, because level 2 is going to give us Eldritch Blast as a base, and also Agonizing Blast and Repelling Blast from the level 2 evocations, meaning that this is going to do a ton of damage with 3 beams. So with this setup, if we use Duke Ravengard's Longsword, giving us a +2 to our Charisma and Commander Strike as well, which is nice, and also temporary hit points equal to our Charisma modifier whenever we kill an enemy, to both ourselves and our allies, this is going to give us a ton of power. So basically cast Eldritch Blast, and then get to go ham with our offhand attacks using our Father's Longsword, which makes sense for Will. But the subclass I went for with Fighter was the Champion, because unfortunately Battlemaster maneuvers don't really work with the offhand, and Eldritch Knight, well, we dumped intelligence, so that wasn't going to work. So I've gone with Champion, which is allows us to kind of spec more into a critical fishing build with Eldritch Blast. So, because the Knife of the Undermountain King is going to give us that critical hit reduction, Champion is going to give us a critical hit reduction, and also any of the headpieces that give us critical hit reduction is also going to work, meaning that if we go for Savarok's Horned Helmet, which has an unrestricted reduction, we can go with that, or you can go with something like the Covert Cowl or the Dark Justitia armor, which will do the same thing, but only if you're obscured, but those are earlier game options. They can be obtained in Act 2, whereas this is obtained in Act 3. So overall, you're going to be able to hit critical hits with your Eldritch Blasts and your weapon attacks much more often, making this a bit more of a melee-focused variant, which I think will work out really nicely. Unfortunately, we don't get much to do with our spellcasting here. You can still use your sneak attack with your main hand. If you want to use sneak attack with the offhand, if you want to swap these around, you can. But I feel like using the longsword might be better in the long run if you don't want to rely on the sneak attack damage, because you only get it once per turn. But it can still work out, because you can sneak attack with offhand attacks. I will say, there was something I will point out, because when I discussed this build on the stream, people were saying I should throw Paladin levels in there, because you can, if you set it as like a reaction, you can do Divine Smites with your offhand. I tried making that work, and for some reason, Divine Smite wasn't triggering for me, so I might have done something wrong. Let me know in the comments, but so far as I understand it, Paladin doesn't work. But I just thought I'd throw that out there, just in case anyone from the stream asks. So yeah, that is the build. As you can see, the combat footage will be playing now, which showcases the general gameplay loop here, which is spell attack with our action, and then go ham with our bonus actions, using various utility spells like haste to really bump up our damage, and action surge to go for those Nova rounds. As you can see, the gameplay style is so fun. You're just throwing massive spells around, dealing tons of damage, and still being able to look cool while attacking with your offhand. I think this is really, really awesome. It's one of my favourite builds I've ever made, and I would personally try using this in honor mode. That's how confident I am in this build. The only issue I can see potentially arising is the slightly lower HP. But specifically, this wizard variant is using mostly wizard levels, which means that 14 in Constitution is hurting us a little bit. If you find that the extra cantrip damage really isn't helping, something like the Amulet of Greater Health once you reach Act 3 could really be good. But I feel like if you're just playing on Tactician or just regular, or if you're just playing like a regular playthrough on Balance and are just trying to have fun, then please pick up this build. It is so fun, and it's high power, but also comes with a ton of interesting stuff about it. Again, just being able to blast spells left and right and still being able to do powerful weapon attacks just feels so good. As for end of video stuff, nothing really much to go over here. Again, everything's still going really well. I mean, I'm still going to be going through build requests. However, I will mention something. This was discussed on my last live stream, which I did as of the time of this recording yesterday, which was the Sunday. We discussed that in the future, once I've got through this backlog of build requests, we're going to move on to the companion builds, that being Halcyon, Minsk, Jaheira, and Minthara. But I want to get the community's involvement on this because so many people have been requesting it, so I'm going to be doing a theory crafting live stream, probably in a couple of weeks, where we will be going over the companion builds and we'll build them together like we did for the builds I'm currently doing now. So I think that would actually be a really fun little activity for us to do, and, you know, just make it a bit more fun to get the community involved on something that has been so highly requested. So yeah, I think I'm going to leave the video here. Again, bit of a weird presentation style today, but it kind of helped me to get the point across. I'll obviously have basically a more detailed build roundup in the description if you want to check that out, if some of this was a bit confusing. I will leave you with the combat footage now, because that's all I have to say, and I will see you all next time. Thank you for watching.
Come a little closer. That thing's focused on us now. Let's get to the transport and go.